York Times taking some blowback under fire on Benghazi after reporting that there's no evidence that al-Qaeda played a role in the murder of our ambassador and 3 other Americans, and that an anti-Islamic film did play a role in inciting the violence. Key Republican lawmakers blasting that report, calling it inaccurate, and saying the attack on the U.S. consulate was clearly planned and led by al-Qaeda. Congressman Peter King chairs the subcommittee on counterterrorism intelligence, and he is my guest now. Sir, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
What do you think of the report? You saw it in the New York Times. You called it misleading yesterday. What do you think now?
I think it's entirely misleading, and I agree completely with what Mike Rogers said in the bit you showed earlier on. The fact is that Ansar al-Sharia is affiliated with al-Qaeda. We're never going to be attacked probably by al-Qaeda core again. We've known that for several years. Going back to the Christmas Day bombing in 2009, the Times Square bombing in 2010, that was not core al-Qaeda. These were affiliates of al-Qaeda. So to say that it was an affiliate rather than al-Qaeda itself means absolutely nothing. I mean, from the start, the question I had was Ansar al-Sharia involved? They were. So I consider that an al-Qaeda attack. That's the new face of the enemy we face. Al-Qaeda is adapted.
React to this then, because that reporter was on Meet the Press. And what he seemed to suggest was that if you cannot tie it to Osama bin Laden, then you cannot call it al-Qaeda.
Oh, he's entirely wrong. The fact is, this is the new face of al-Qaeda, and we have to face up to that. And that's what a number of us have been saying for several years now, that core al-Qaeda has been very much weakened. As a result of that, al-Qaeda is now splintered, it's metastasized, it's morphed, and in many ways it's more of a threat now than it was on September 11, 2001. And if our State Department people didn't realize that in Benghazi, then that's even more of an indictment than what we knew before. If they're trying to say that they were not ready for an attack from Ansar al-Sharia because they didn't know it was affiliated with al-Qaeda, then they really fell down in the drum more than we even thought they did. And Ansar al-Sharia has a training camp right near that compound in Benghazi.
The reporter is David Kirkpatrick, and what he said is, quote, "If by al-Qaeda you mean the organization founded by Osama bin Laden." Now this issue came up on Sunday also. Hillary Clinton before a hearing on the Hill last January. Watch.
The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
There are some suggesting the Times is covering for Hillary Clinton. Do you believe that?
I believe that the Times is certainly covering for the State Department. Obviously, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State at that time. I think they're also trying to defuse what they believe is a Republican issue in the next presidential campaign. And I'm not talking about a partisan issue. I'm talking about a legitimate policy issue. And if they're going to claim that these affiliates of al-Qaeda are not al-Qaeda, and therefore we don't have to be as concerned about them as we do about al-Qaeda, and do not have to maintain our anti-terror efforts to the same extent against these affiliates that we do against al-Qaeda, then that is a very, very real policy issue that has to be discussed. Because we saw 4 Americans were killed because of this group, and if somehow that's not considered al-Qaeda and we're going to let our guard down, then that's going to put our country at risk.
Well, it appears that this is far from settled. Why do you think that is?
It's because, I think partly, except for Fox, the media has not really pushed this issue. Obviously, the Democrats have gone into a defensive mode, even though I give Adam Schiff on the Intelligence Committee credit yesterday for saying that al-Qaeda was involved, that it's complicated, but al-Qaeda was involved. Also, I think that, unfortunately, not enough Republicans are raising this issue. They're afraid of being accused of being political. The fact is, we have an obligation to raise this issue in the national interest. When Hillary Clinton says, what difference does it make? Well, the difference is if we don't undo this mistake now, if we don't correct it for the future, then we're going to have many more Americans killed if we don't learn the lessons of Benghazi. And so far, too many people, including the New York Times, which almost always gets it wrong anyway, but they certainly have not learned the lesson of Benghazi.
Peter King, thank you. Republican from New York.
Bill, thank you.
20
and Happy New Year to you, Bill.
Thank you. S to you as well. See you in 14. Thank you, sir. Here's Heather.